And we are back. Hey everyone, Stephen Morris here, Advisor REIT. Today let's talk about 1031 exchanges and how you can use Delaware Statutory Trust to help you achieve the most optimal outcome and defer all the capital gains that you were looking to avoid paying into this particular strategy. So here's how the scenario plays out. You sold your property and you're looking for a replacement property, and that replacement property, after doing the math on how much cash you're putting in versus how much debt you're giving up, versus how much debt you're taking on, results in a small capital gain of roughly, let's just say $100,000. And it was a $3 million exchange, so there's quite a bit of money to it, but you just can't quite get that last $100,000 off. You don't really want to pay capital gains on the $100,000 and pay that additional $20,000 in taxes. And so what do? It's really hard. You're not really interested in buying a small piece of property. And even if you could, where would it be? I mean, maybe if you're like in New York or California, there doesn't even exist a $100,000 property. You can't even buy a small sliver of land for that price. And you don't really want to go out of state and look. It's just too much time and effort to waste on looking to defer a $20,000 capital gain. So this is where Delaware Statutory Trust will come in. So what are those? A Delaware Statutory Trust is a trust that's formed in you guessed it, the state of Delaware, and under Revenue Ruling 2004-86 is a method of being able to acquire property fractionally through this trust, and the trust has to follow certain rules and procedures in order to achieve this certain tax outcome for its investors. So the way these work is that the trust itself doesn't even file a tax return. In fact, the members of the trust or the owners of the trust would file their own tax return outcome based on their fractional ownership of the piece of property. These trusts are primarily going to be investing in large institutional grade assets that don't typically have a lot of moving components, and you're going to see why when we talk about some of the 7 deadly sins that the Revenue Ruling 2004-86 prescribes. But generally speaking, you're talking about having multiple investors buying into some very large triple net deal. Maybe it's a very large industrial warehouse that's leased to Amazon over the course of 30 years. And so then these investors have a direct ownership in the property under the revenue ruling. Why is this important? Because you can buy just enough that you need in that Delaware Statutory Trust to be able to offset the remainder of the gain that we talked about here in that situation where you had a leftover $100,000 of gains that you were looking to defer. So what's the deal with these Delaware Statutory Trusts, and how are they different from perhaps REITs, real estate investment trusts, that you may be familiar with and that we've talked about in other videos? Well, the Delaware Statutory Trust, after it's raised its initial capital round, can't raise any more capital. So if there's a deficiency or if the company needs more money to invest, they're going to have to probably just sell the property. They cannot ask for a capital call from its investors any longer. Once the initial round's done, they are done. That's it. They can't renegotiate leases, so that pretty much eliminates all apartments, because apartments have a lot of turnover and they're going to consistently have new leases. And so as a result, that would pretty much disqualify it and would violate one of the deadly sins under the revenue ruling. So generally speaking, the types of investments that are most suited for this type of investment are investments that have very long-term leases. An industrial warehouse that has a long-term tenant, for example, like Amazon, might be there for 30 years. We'll sign a 30-year lease, believe it or not. A triple net lease, you own a drugstore like CVS, well, you own the property around the CVS. CVS will sign a 25 or 30 or 35-year lease with you. And that is a very long-term lease. You can't do anything with it afterwards. It's pretty much just gonna generate cash flow, and you're gonna stay pretty much out of the lease negotiation. The Delaware Statutory Trust has to truly be passive. There's no active management, there's no active involvement in it. And ultimately, let's say the asset gets sold, they can't use the money from the proceeds to invest in something else. The property would eventually get sold, they would distribute the sale proceeds to the owners of the Delaware Statutory Trust, and then they would wind it up. Additionally, there's no allowance for reinvestment from rental income. So let's say, for example, that the properties are generating substantial amount of income and they want to reinvest that income into a brand new piece of dirt, or maybe they want to buy another triple net property nearby. Can't work either. It's pretty much going to be the same exact property throughout the life of the trust. And once the property is ready to sell, that's going to be the end of the trust. I should also mention that you cannot refinance the loan either. So once the loan comes to term, you're done. that's it. It's time to sell the property. You can't go in and get another loan or refinance or take out that loan to extend the life of your ownership. Doesn't work either. So there's quite a few restrictions around these Delaware Statutory Trusts, but they do have their place in the market, specifically because they are a great vehicle to do a 1031 exchange into. And eventually, when you want to get out of that property, you can liquidate your particular ownership in that trust and move into a different asset. There are some limitations around who can invest in these Delaware Statutory Trusts. Because the sale of these trust interests is considered to be a security, the broker-dealer that's going to be selling you this particular security is going to need to go through some vetting process to determine whether or not you're able to invest in this security. Generally speaking, you need to be an accredited investor, which means you have to have a net worth of $1 million, excluding the value of your primary residence, or $200,000 annually per year of income, or $300,000 if you're a joint filer. The last question I'm sure you're asking is, where do I buy these interests in Delaware Statutory Trust? Generally speaking, it's going to be through your wealth manager. Your financial planner is going to have access to a lot of these Delaware Statutory Trusts, and they'll be able to show you all the offering packages around what they look like, and that will be the ultimate way you're going to be able to buy these. These are not sold in the public market. You're not going to be able to open up your E-Trade or Schwab account and look at a bunch of Delaware Statutory Trusts. These are primarily going to be done through broker-dealers. So I hope this helps you figure out a great strategy in terms of trying to top out or maximize your tax deferral in your 1031 exchange. If you find yourself in a situation where it looks like you might have a little bit of gain left over from your 1031 exchange, then I recommend that you reach out to us over here, and we'll be happy to help you understand what the ultimate tax outcome is going to look like should you decide to invest also in a Delaware Statutory Trust. Thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you in our next video.